the Bill of Rights and rule of law, but on other issues that are near and dear to our heart. General Boykin served as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense under George Bush from 2002 to 2007. He spent 36 years in the military, 13 of them in Delta Force, and most of us veterans believe that he actually is Delta Force. Still is Delta Force. So we don't cross him. We love him.
Undercover.
So without any further ado, General, if you'd like to come up here.
But every time I come to the state of Michigan, we have absolutely miserable weather. Last year I was up at, what is it, Gaylord? Yeah. And, no bell. Yeah, and it's just Rick Warzenblatt, this crazy Pollock back there in the back. He says, yeah, come on, this is the 1st of April, it's a beautiful time of year. It was 4 below and snowing in April. So I've done it again. Thanks for letting me be with you. What a privilege it is to be with you here in spite of this weather. And it's great to see all of you that are willing to get out and get in here on these icy roads. How many of you in here are veterans of our military or armed services? Woo! Thank you very much. Tell you something about the Tea Party? Tell you something about the conservative movement? How many of you are Marines? Oh boy. Well, you heard the Marine Corps mating call there, didn't you? Oh, so let me just tell you this one thing. So this Marine sergeant always wanted to be a drill sergeant. And the reason he wanted to be a drill sergeant was because he wanted what? He wanted one of them Smokey the Bear hats. And they never let him go to drill sergeant school, so he never got his Smokey the Bear hat, but he retired out of Quantico, which is right outside of Washington. It's in Virginia, right on Interstate 95. And when he retired, he went to work for the Virginia State Police. They sent him to their little school, and when he graduated from that school, guess what they gave him? A Smokey the Bear hat. And you know what? One day he was out there on Interstate 95, he was patrolling, and all of a sudden this car came down the highway just screaming, and he put the blue light on. He pulled that car off on the side of Interstate 95 there. He got out, he reached in, took his Smokey the Bear hat, he put that thing on, checked himself in the mirror, and he was looking good. Strolled over to the car that he had just pulled over, and guess what? It was one of these blonde-headed women from California. Now, I don't want to get crossways with all the blondes in here, but these blondes from California talk a little different than the rest of them. And this woman, that's what she said. She said, oh, that was so sweet of you to put that little blue thing on, so you and I could stop and talk on the side of the highway. Oh, that was so sweet. She said, you were speed. She said, I didn't realize I'm from California. And this is such a beautiful state. I was just admiring how beautiful it is here. Oh, my goodness. Let me see your driver's license. She said, I left it in California. He said, show me a photo ID. She opened her purse, she started scrambling around, and there she could not find a photo. She found a mirror. She said, oh, here's me. She handed it to him. He said, I'm sorry, ma'am, if I realized you were law enforcement, I would not have stopped. And you Army guys are going to have to protect them. me start by telling you a story. I'll tell you a story about a guy named Cecil. Cecil grew up on a tobacco farm in eastern North Carolina. And Cecil, at the age of 17, slipped off and went down to the recruiting station in March of 1943. Just as he turned 17 years old, he went down to the recruiting station in Wilson, North Carolina, and he enlisted in the United States Navy. He enlisted because he had 4 brothers that were already in the U.S. military serving in World War II, and Cecil knew it was his patriotic duty to serve this country. So Cecil went off to war. Of the 5 brothers that served in World War II, he was the only one that came home wounded. He lost his left eye. On D-Day, he was driving a landing craft ashore at a place called Normandy. The only thing that he really remembered was a huge explosion, and then he woke up in Bethesda Naval Hospital, not knowing how he got here or remembering much about what happened. They told him he was blind in his left eye. He never regained the sight of his left eye. Cecil took his discharge and went back to the tobacco farm where Cecil had grown up, and married his sweetheart and started his family. And so the Korean War came along, and the United States Army had a program that would take disabled veterans that could still function. Cecil went back in the U.S. military, served through the Korean War in the U.S. Army. After the Korean War, Cecil got out of the Army and went back to the tobacco farm. And then in 1956, the United States Marine Corps offered Cecil an opportunity to go to work for them as a civilian employee, and he spent 32 years with the U.S. Marine Corps, to include a tour in Vietnam. You see, Cecil loved America. He believed in serving his country. He loved America, and by the way, he loved God. Cecil was a man with no education. In fact, Cecil dropped out of high school. But he loved his country, and he believed that it was worth serving. He believed that it was worth sacrificing for. He believed that it was worth risking his life for, because he loved America. You see, Cecil was a man that had great faith in America. He was also a man that had great faith in God. Cecil's best friend at one point lost his home and it burned to the ground. And Cecil, at a time when he could barely pay his own bills, reached in his pocket and took every penny he had out of his pocket and gave it to his friend. To help his friend. Because you see, Cecil did not believe that it was the government's responsibility to take care of fellow Americans. He believed that it was his responsibility to take care of his neighbors. It was the church's responsibility to take care of his neighbors, but it was not the government's responsibility, regardless of what our president has said. You know, Roosevelt started a very bad trend. Franklin Roosevelt started this whole thing with social welfare. He robbed the communities and the churches of their opportunity and incentive to take care of your neighbor. Am I my brother's keeper? Cecil's view was, yes, I am. When it comes to taking care of him in times of crisis, times of need, I am my brother's keeper. Cecil loved his family. He loved his nation and he loved God. And Cecil, when his own children were gone, at a time in a very racist area where it was unpopular for the races to mix, Cecil brought home a little black boy. He told his other children who had already left home, "This is your brother, treat him as such." He raised this little black boy as one of his own. although he didn't have any papers, but everybody knew that Shaquille was Cecil's boy. He also loved baseball, and he began to teach Shaquille to play baseball, and he helped Shaquille to grow into being a good man and a good baseball player. And he was so well known for his love of baseball that they named the local high school baseball field after him. They named it the Gerald Cecil Boykin baseball. Cecil was there. You know what? Cecil loved America. Because he took an oath. He took an oath to this country 3 times. He said, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter. So help me God. On the 26th of December, 1970, I took that same oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States because I had no choice but to love America. Because I grew up with a patriot. I grew up with a man that loved America with all his heart. He died prior to 9/11, and this is hard for me to say. First of all, I still miss him. Secondly, I'm glad he didn't see 9/11. Because it would have killed him. It would have hurt him so deeply to see what happened to America on 9/11. I'm glad that he went to be with the Lord because he knew the Lord. I'm an ordained minister, for those of you who don't know. Let me tell you something, I'm not very religious. I'm really not. I'm not very religious. I had enough religion stuff down my throat when I was a kid that I'm done with religion. I'm all about relationship. Relationship with my Savior. But I'm not here to preach to you. I'm not here to proselytize, but I want you to understand as I go through what I've got to say to you today that I'm a Christian first. I'm an American second. And I'm a father and a husband third. I love this nation. I love this Constitution. A Constitution that was given to us by some great men, our founding fathers. You know what I am saddened by? I'm saddened by the fact that very few people know who these founding fathers were. You see, we don't study the founding fathers the way we should, or the way we used to in our school system. We don't study the Constitution. Most people cannot quote even one of the 10 amendments. Most people don't know what's in the Constitution. And therefore, they don't know who these founding fathers were. And until you study the founding fathers and understand who these founding fathers were, what motivated them, you cannot fully appreciate what this nation is. You see, I think it's very important that we understand that first and foremost, these were men of faith. Now, you can say what you want to. You don't have to believe what I believe. And again, I'm not here to preach to you, but I want you to understand that I think it is so fundamental to our identity as a nation for us to understand these were men of faith. Now, some of modern revisionists, thank you. Revisionist historians want us to believe that they were just a bunch of slave owning black boys and they were all deists. And that is just simply not true. In fact, the majority of them opposed slavery. Check the record. But that said, that's not my point. That's not where I want to go at this point. What I want to say is they were men of faith. They're men of the Christian faith. I see nothing in there that says there were any upward Muslims. Men of faith, and they were divinely inspired. They were divinely inspired, first of all, to sign a Declaration of Independence, and then ultimately to come back to Philadelphia and write a Constitution. You know what they did in doing all of that? They created a huge experiment because America was and still because they gave us two concepts that were absolutely unheard of. And the first one was the consent of the government. That was unheard of. There were every form of government prior to the signing of our Constitution and the ratification of that Constitution, every form of government. In fact, Benjamin Franklin even said, we've surveyed all forms of government and found none suitable for this new nation. And all of those governments were governments that were controlled by a pharaoh or a king or a caliph. But this was a concept called consent of the government. The second concept that they gave us, which was unheard of, was unalienable rights. Rights that came only from God. Stop and think about this. You see, when Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptist and made reference to the fact that we would always maintain a wall of separation between the church and the state, that was not an original concept by Thomas Jefferson. He was reflecting on the early pilgrims that came here, largely for reasons of religious liberty, because they rejected the authority of the King of England in religious, spiritual matters. The king said, I'm the head of the church as well as the head of the state, and they said, no, you're not. We don't recognize your authority in the church. So as Thomas Jefferson was writing that, he was reflecting on the concepts that had been brought over from people. It wasn't an original cause. It's not in our Constitution. These men gave us the concept of consent of the governed and unalienable rights, both of which were unheard of at the time. They were men of faith. They were warriors. They were great warriors. What's a warrior? When we get through, I'll be doing books out of the book table. Just on the 6th, I guess Monday of this week, Dr. Stu Weber out of Portland, Oregon, and I came up with a book called The Warrior's Soul. We've been writing on this for 3 years. The warrior's soul, what does it mean? It's trying to explain what a warrior is. See, because a lot of the people that we consider warriors are nothing but thugs. You see, the reality is, just because you wear the uniform, just because you're in the military, does not mean you are a warrior. It just simply doesn't. You see, what is a warrior? The warrior is the one who has a transcendent cause. The warrior is the one that says, this is what I hold dear. This is my faith. This is my country. This is my family. This is the Constitution of the United States. This is what represents. This is the Marxist movement taking place in America today. This is the evil that wants to destroy what I hold dear. This is the communists that have infiltrated my government and want to destroy the very freedoms that my founding fathers gave me. And I am going to stand between the two. That's worth sacrificing for. That's worth risking for. So that doesn't destroy. That's what the warrior is. That's what the warrior is. Because I have a transcendent cause. You see, I've seen men die. I've seen men die because of something they believed. Many of you know that I was the commander of the Delta Force during the events that you now know as Black Hawk Down. Some of that is chronicled in my autobiography, which I will also have out there. I commanded the Delta Force during that period. And I would tell you that on the 3rd of October 1993, when that first Black Hawk went down, I sent everything we had to get the 4 men that I knew were alive, as well as 2 that I knew were dead, out of that crash. Everybody I had went to that first crash, but then the second helicopter was shot down 30 minutes later. And I had nothing to send for that second crash. Not immediately. But there were 2 men, Randy Shugart and Gary Gordon, that were in a helicopter on a Black Hawk up above when that helicopter went in. And Randy Randy Shugart and Gary Gordon watched that helicopter go in, and they went over to the top of it, and they looked down. They were snipers, Delta Force snipers. And they looked down, and they saw that those men in that crash were still alive, and they called me and said, "Sir, put us in. Put us in. Those men are still alive. Put us in, and we'll get them out." I said, "Guys, I've got nothing to support you with. There are 5 million people down there. I can't put you in. We've got some way to support you." And everybody went to the first crash. I'm getting a rescue force together now with the cooks and the clerks and the mechanics. But I can't put you in yet. Stay above them with your sniper rifles. And with those sniper rifles, you just take every Somali you can. Take them out. Don't let them get on that crash. They continued shooting with their sniper rifles, keeping the Somali. They called me a second time. And they said, "Sir, it's getting so intense down there, we can't keep them off much longer. Put us in, sir, put us in." I said, "Guys, I can't support you. I got nothing to support you with. It's going to be another 30 minutes before I've got a rescue force to come and help you. Use the door guns on the helicopter if you have to, but keep the Somalis off that crash." They called me a third time, and almost with a pleading voice, they said, Sir, put us in. We're the only hope. Sir, put us in." I said, "Do you guys realize what you're in?" "Oh, yes, sir." "Yes, sir, put us in." I said a short prayer. Picked up the handset and I said, "Put them in." They went in, they fought their way into the crash site. They got the 4 men out. They set up on the other side of the helicopter and began to take Somalis coming over the wall, knocking them down until finally Randy Shugart, or Gary Gordon actually, went back to the co-pilot, Mike Durant, and he said, is there any more ammo? We're running out of ammo." And he said, "Look behind the co-pilot's seat." Shugart grabbed the ammo behind the co-pilot's seat, ran over and threw it over to his partner, and they both reloaded and started shooting. And then Mike Durant told us that he heard Randy Shugart yell out, "Gordy, I'm hit! Gordy, I'm hit bad." And his gun went silent. He was obviously dead. And then Mike told us that he heard Gordy yell out, "Mike, I'm hit." And he was dead. I stood in the White House the following spring and watched as the President of the United States presented the Congressional Medals of Honor to the widows and the children of those 2 very brave men. As I stood there, I said to myself and to the Lord, I said, "What kind of man would do this? Who were these men?" And the answer was they were men with a transcendent cause. They were men that there was something in their lives that was more important than life itself. They had a transcendent cause. They were willing to serve and risk and even die. And you know what it was? It wasn't the Constitution of the United States. It was those 4 men on the ground that they had made a pledge to in this thing we call the Ranger Creed. It says, "I'll never leave a fallen comrade to fall into the hands of the enemy." They had a transcendent cause. You see, they were warriors because they knew what was worth sacrificing for. They knew even what was worth dying for. And I believe with all my heart that they knew their chances of coming home were incredibly small. You know, we've got to have a transcendent cause. And remember when we talk about the Founding Fathers, as they wrote that document called the Declaration of Independence, what did they say in the very end? We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Think about it. Depending on what historian you read, 9 of them died during the Revolutionary War. Most of them lost everything they had. Go back and just study. Just look it up on the web, the Founding Fathers, what happened to them. And it is incredible. Because, see, unlike most revolutions, These were some of the most wealthy elite in the colonies at the time. Most revolutions started among the very poor. This was the other way around. These people had everything to lose and nothing to gain but an idea, an experiment, an opportunity is what they had to gain. Think about it. And many of them lost everything they had. Some of them that were so wealthy literally didn't have the money to be buried. Their families had to borrow money to bury them. It's incredible if you look at the lives of our founding fathers and what ultimately happened to them. They were men of extraordinary courage. Well, where's that courage today? Do we have that courage today in America? Do we see that kind of courage? You see it on the battlefield. You see it in Iraq and Afghanistan. You see those young men and women. That's right, I said women, because we've got women now that have received silver stars for gallantry because they're warriors, because they were willing to step forward and say, as Isaiah said in 6:8, "Here am I, send me." But where is that kind of courage? Last year, before Ted Cruz stood up and filibustered over Obamacare, he called a bunch of us to Mike Lee's office, Senator Mike Lee out of Utah. He called us to the office there, and there were probably about 30 of us. It was tea parties. Jenny Beth Martin was there. Brett Bozell was there. Me and Tony Perkins were there. And there was, you know, there was almost a who's who, with the exception of me. It was a who's who that was there in Mike Lee's office, and Ted Cruz looked at us and said, "Folks," he said, "I'm getting ready to filibuster." They said, "I want to tell you why. I want you to understand why." He said, "I sat in Kerrville, Texas last week, and I sat with businessmen in Kerrville, Texas." And he said, I had one businessman who looked at me and said, "Senator, if you can't stop Obamacare," he said, "I'm not going to be able to hire anybody else in my business." He said, another one looked at me and said, "Senator, if you can't stop Obamacare, I'm going to have to lay some people off because the cost of health care is just too much." He said, I had another one that said, "Senator, if you can't stop Obamacare," he said, "I'm going to have to shut down my business because I just can't afford to stay in business." And he said, that went on and on. He said, "And I promise those people in Kerrville, Texas that I sat before," he said, "I'll do everything I can to stop it." Now, he looked at us and he said, "Now, I want to tell you something." He said, "My own party's going to hate me for it. They're going to call me a clown." He said, "They're going to say I'm doing this for personal reasons and all." And he said, they're going to hate me. They're going to vilify me. And the news, the media is going to be even worse." But he said, "I made a pledge to those businessmen in Kerrville, Texas. I'm going to do it. And if you'll stand with me, we have at least a chance of winning." Well, what he predicted was absolutely true. He was just absolutely ridiculed by his own party. He was just bombarded with hate mail from people outside of Texas. Not from the people that he represented in the state of Texas, but from people around the country. It said, "You caused the government to be shut down." Let me tell you something about shutting down the government. 18%, at most, 18% of the government was shut down. Like the World War II memorial. Yeah. This was the biggest bunch of nonsense. They haven't shut the government down. How many members of Congress did you see that didn't go to work? Didn't get a paycheck more importantly?
Yeah, right.
None. Zero. They didn't shut the government down. This is the biggest bunch of nonsense. Now, Ted Cruz is a man of courage. See, that's the courage of the founding fathers. That is the absolute courage of the founding fathers. And by the way, if the same situation were to occur again, he'll do it again. He'll do it again because that's the kind of courage that we need. You can say, "Why? I can't believe you stood up there and helped shut down the government." and this is all I say to you, is you need to have a better understanding of this whole process. Because what he actually did was he fulfilled a promise to the people that he represents. Last week, I was with Louis Gohmert. Many of you know Louis Gohmert. I was with him the day after the vote for John Boehner. Louis came into we had asked him, I'm in a meeting every Wednesday with a lot of those who you would know, and chaired by Clarence Thomas's wife, Jenny. And Louis, we'd asked Louis to come over. And what we wanted Louis to do was come over so we could just love on him. You see, people in his own party are beating Louis up. Louis and all the rest of them. All the other 24 that didn't vote for John Boehner are getting the stuffings kicked out of them right now. But you know what? That's because the rest of those cowards know that these men that stood up had more courage than they did, and they are jealous.
Hear, hear.
Let me tell you, you can say what you want to, but it takes courage to do what they did. And let me tell you something else. I'm with the Family Research Council, and we also have a political action element, and we contribute to people that are running for office. We contribute to them. And I want to tell you, some of those that we supported this time were sore disappointments when it came time for them to fulfill the pledge they made to us and a lot of other people that supported. And I'll tell you something else. Some of them are getting their heads handed to them right now. Their constituents are saying, this is your first day in Congress, and you have already broken a campaign promise.
Yep.
And I must tell you, I got absolute, and some of them are Tea Party candidates too, by the way. Some of them are Tea Party candidates. And I hope they do get their heads handed to them in the next election. I hope we find some people the whole thing is because there's no courage. There's no courage. You see, they're worried about what the media is going to say. They're worried about what somebody else is going to say. They got no courage. They're worried about what committee assignments they're going to get or whether they're going to get any or not. Louis is the longest serving guy on the Judicial Committee. He has never even had a subcommittee. I can't tell you because it's a big company what Boehner calls him. But let me tell you something. He's still out there fighting. He's still out there plugging away. He is a courageous man. And we need that kind of courage. Look, you got a man in this room today that has stood for what he believes in. Hey, Benjamin, he stood for what he believes in, but what? Look, I want to be real clear to you. I'm a conservative and I'm a Christian. The Republican Party in Virginia came to me 20 times this year and said, would you run for Senate? I want you to run for Senate. I said, no. No, I won't. No, no. Finally said, what part of no are you having trouble with? No, because you're not a conservative party. You don't represent my values. Because you keep telling me, I want your vote. I want your money. I want your support. But I don't want your values.
Yeah.
I'm being tired. I'm really tired of being told I've got to walk away from the social leaders. I'm tired of that. So where do people like me go? Where do people like Dave Atcham go? Where do we go? You want us to form a new party? Yeah. That's what's coming. That's what's going to happen because you don't want to. You want to deal with you don't want my issues. I care about life. I care about families. I care about immigration. But don't tell me you want all of my support and my money and my vote, but you don't want my, where do I go? What do I do? These are fundamental, basic issues. See, Ronald Reagan said a conservative is part of a three-legged stool. What did he say? What are the three legs of that stool? He said, first of all, it's smaller government and fiscal accountability. Smaller government, less spending, less debt, that's one. The second one, national security. You care about the fact that we've got a huge problem today in the world because nobody respects us anymore, because we've got a president that nobody respects. We've got a president that doesn't know what he's doing. We've got a president that has experts surrounding him, absolute experts in things like global warming. But when it comes to our status in the world, they don't know anything. Nothing. And therefore, nobody respects us anymore. The fact that when a president stands up and says, ISIS is not Islam, you've got to look at it and say, either you don't have a clue what you're talking about or you're just lying. Of course, this is Islam. Let me tell you something. This may surprise some of you, but most of the people in Dearborn, most of the Muslims in Dearborn don't want Sharia, and they don't want to be part of jihad. The problem is, the only ones in Dearborn or anywhere else in America that have a voice are the ones that want to destroy this country. They want Sharia to be the law of the land. They want jihad to be their raison d'etre, their reason to exist. You got organizations like the Council of American Islamic Relations, which, by the way, is a terrorist group.
Here, here.
I was speaking in Vancouver, Washington, and the mayor there, who is absolutely a gutless wonder in Vancouver, and I hope that somebody gets the word to him. CARE came after me. You see, I talk a lot about the threat of radical Islam. See, I don't hate Muslims. I'm not afraid of Muslims. I actually want to try to do something to help them, like bring the light and the gospel of Jesus Christ. They come after me all the time. So the mayor of this Vancouver, Washington, came out and made this big public statement. And I said last week, this mayor has lost something. And if you will just not think that I'm totally crass, what he's lost is right down in the growing area. Please, lady, don't get upset with me. And they came after me. CARE came after me. So he got on television out there in Vancouver and he said, I'm appalled at this organizing committee. Hold on a minute. Was what I just said on radio? Yes, sir. Go ahead. My name is Dave Adjumant. I'm appalled that the organizing committee didn't, wasn't more select in choosing who the mayor's prayer breakfast speaker would be. And I'm certainly not going to attend this with this Islamophobic knucklehead, basically what he was saying. And he said, and I suggest that everybody boycott this. Don't go to the prayer breakfast. I'm not going, and I recommend all of you not go. Now, you know what the outcome of that was? They sold every ticket they had. But I said to him then, I said, you are responding to a group, CARE, that was identified as an unindicted co-conspirator in the 2008 Holy Land Foundation trial, which is the biggest terror financing trial in American history. And they are an unindicted co-conspirator. So you're responding to them. Well, that has been put to rest a long time ago. It was 3 weeks later that 2 Muslim countries came out and identified CARE as what? A terrorist organization. Terrorist organization. Not just unindicted co-conspirators. The United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia both identified them as a terrorist organization. But this gutless mayor, who was not concerned about the truth, you see, that's the problem with Dave Andrews. Nobody wants to know the truth. Nobody wants to do an assessment of whether what he's saying is true or not. Now they're accusing him of being a racist for publishing. Is he black?
Please go back to
Hey, and I just
sensitivity
found out,
training.
by the way, I just found out that I guess I'm supposed to be a part of the Ku Klux Klan, right? Yeah, seriously? Now, let me tell you about the Ku Klux Klan. Next week, I will be with Tony Evans, with T.D. Jakes, with Bishop Harry Jackson, with all the black leaders of the church in Dallas, Texas, at a reconciliation service down there in a huge church down in Dallas, Texas. I'm in the Ku Klux Klan. You got me. Dude, I got a black brother. My point is this. The truth doesn't matter. Nobody wants to know the truth. What they do, what's happening is they fear a guy like Dave Andrews. They fear him. They fear him because he has the guts, the courage to stand for what he believes in. You don't have to agree. You may have a totally different, you don't have to agree. But the fact that he's willing to stand when the easy way would be to compromise. Amen. The easy way would be to say, I'm going to stay out of the Where is that kind of courage? Man, we desperately need people that have the courage to stand for their convictions. So what we have today, as a result of this lack of courage, we've returned to an era of tyranny. Let me tell you, America is in the most lawless period in the history of this nation. Total lawlessness. And when the president himself is actually leading us into lawlessness, it's a very serious problem. We've got an attorney general, the highest law enforcement man in the country, that is totally lawless. It's just incredible. You know what? When you got IRS targeting people because of their political convictions, that's lawlessness. When you got NSA targeting people because of their political convictions, lawlessness. You've got government by fiat, where if the Congress won't pass it, I'll just sign an executive order and I'll do it anyhow. That's the problem with this immigration thing. You see, what you don't understand is I don't care about the Mexican day worker. What I care about is ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram and all of the other terrorist organizations that are coming across the border. And if you think I don't know what I'm talking about, let me assure you that I do, because I go to the border. I go down there twice a year and I talk to Border Patrol people. And I talk to a guy named George Taylor, Zach Taylor, actually, that is the president of the National Association of Former Border Patrol Officers. He's been down there on that border for 29 years. He knows they are finding Korans, prayer rugs, terrorist training manuals in the wadis, in the gullies on the American side of the border. And 80% of the other than Mexican that they catch down there are Middle Easterners. Look, people say, well, is there any chance ISIS come to America? And I'm not sure. They're here. They're already here. We just granted about $5 million by fiat, by absolute fiat, granted them amnesty. Government by fiat. And then one of the things that I'm greatly concerned about is the declining status and readiness of our military. I could spend the next hour talking to you about how critical the readiness of our military is becoming. And this, by the way, this is a Republican and a Democratic problem. Because the Republican Party hadn't done it. You see, the Republicans and the Democrats came up with these sequestration cuts that are destroying our military. Republicans and Democrats have supported these social programs. Does anybody in here, you ladies, can come and beat up on me? Does any of you ladies in this place really think that women should be in infantry units? No. You really think that that is enhancing the readiness of our military? No. And I'm going to tell you something. If any one of you men in here would not do all you could in combat to protect that woman, then you're not what God created you to be. And I'll just tell you, every one of you. Our military readiness is at a critical point and getting worse, and I'm very, very concerned about that. And then as I look at the fact that we're becoming a Marxist nation, this redistribution of wealth, class warfare, it's not just racial warfare, racial class warfare. It's the have and the have-nots, it's the Republicans and the Democrats, the blacks and the whites, the Hispanics. It's racial warfare, I mean, it's class warfare on so many fronts. That's part of Marxism. Redistribution of wealth is part of Marxism. Nationalization of the economy, the bailouts, that's Marxism. Plain and simple, it's Marxism. By the way, any of you know how much it wound up costing us for bailing out the auto industry? $10.6 billion. Estimates run as high as $9.5 billion. Okay? So we didn't come out too well on that. But that's all part of Marxism. Discrediting the opposition. How many of you veterans read the memo that came out of the Department of Homeland Security in 2009 that said the real threats to America in the future are right-wing Christian groups, pro-life groups,
veterans,
Second Amendment groups, Tea Party, and returning veterans. Let me tell you something, I've never been so angry with my government as I was when that came out. I am still furious about it. I got that memorandum on my desk, and I look at it once in a while just to get my blood going. Returning veterans, the very men and women that have sacrificed to this country, are a threat. You know what was not in that memorandum? Radical Islam. Not even in the memorandum. What do you think hate crimes is? Hate crimes is censorship. This is part of the Marxist model. Censorship. See, hate crimes, all hate crimes is about is trying to stop pastors. Trying to stop pastors from talking about homosexuality, about life, about family and social issues. Trying to stop pastors. You see, I was giving this presentation one time in Atlanta, Georgia, to the Southern Baptist organization called the International Mission Board. And two guys from campus stood up and said, you better listen to it. We have friends that have been locked up, pastors that have been locked up because of hate crimes legislation. That's what we came. And how about gun control? How many of you realize that on Christmas Day, International Arms Trade Treaty went into effect, this UN treaty?
What?
Yes. Christmas Day, it went into effect. And by the way, our president signed it through our secretary. Has agreed to see it.
Why don't we make cuts to the Secret Service?
Well, we eliminate it altogether. Well, my son's a Secret Service agent. We probably don't want to eliminate it. Yeah, let me think about that one. I don't have a good response yet. I think he needs a job. And let me say this in the final analysis. You know what? One of the most obvious Marxist things that's happening in our country today is the attack on religious freedom. Yeah. Why? It's all Christians, yeah. It's not, look, it's not a Muslim. Islam is a protected religion thing. But when you see, how many of you saw what happened to the police chief in Atlanta, Georgia, this week? Matter of fact, wrote a book, did everything right, went to the ethics counselors, actually gave a copy of his book to his mayor that he worked for, who thanked him profusely for it. And then somebody complained and they fired the police. Are you kidding? But that's the tip of the iceberg. What's happening in terms of the restrictions and the infringements on the First Amendment are absolutely incredible. I think you can't believe what's happening. Now here's the question you have to ask yourself. What did the Founding Fathers give us when they wrote the First Amendment? Did they give you freedom of worship? No, what they gave you was freedom of religion. Stop and think about it. See, Adolf Hitler, back in the 30s, he went to the leaders of the church, and Adolf Hitler said, I'll tell you what, so you can have your services, but you better have them in the church or in your home. Do not bring your faith, your religion out into the public square, or I will crush you. Who opposed him? Dietrich Bonhoeffer opposed him, and it cost him his life. See, even Hitler was willing to allow the church freedom of worship, but that's not what the Founding Fathers intended for us to have. They intended for us to have freedom of religion, which means I can believe what I want to believe, and I can talk about it, because the very next thing in the same amendment was freedom of speech. I can talk about it. I can do it in the public square. That's why when the evangelist stands up and says, I believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, they come after him with a vengeance. Well, you don't have to agree with him, but that's his conviction based on his faith. So why does he get hammered? He gets hammered because they fear him. Because he has the courage that so many of the politicians, and not just in Michigan, but all over this country, they don't have that kind of courage and conviction. And I hope, pray to God, that we'll get more people with courage. We've got to return to our conservative values. We're wrapping up with this. What do we do? First of all, get informed. It's good that you're here. It is really good that you're here. But what portion of the state do you represent? 1/100 of 1%. I'm glad you're here. And each of you can make a difference. But the fact of the matter is, most of the American public is ignorant as to what's happening. How did we get a president and an administration like Barack Obama? You know what we did? They are brilliant, first of all. They are absolutely brilliant. They came in and showed everybody a shiny object. At the same time that they were shredding their Constitution. A shiny object, we're going to give you something. We're going to give you something. A shiny object, oh yeah? And what did we get? What was this hope and change stuff about? It was a shiny object. While beneath the table, shredding our Constitution. Most Americans were just totally oblivious, totally ignorant. Because they're not informed. You need to get informed. And by the way, if you think that by watching Fox News that you're getting the whole story, you're absolutely wrong. Now, trust me, I'm not criticizing Fox. I was on Fox yesterday morning. Which, by the way, I was telling some people last night, I was supposed to be on for a 6:50 hit by closing bases in Europe. My phone rings at 4 o'clock in the morning yesterday. Hey, General Boykin, can you get to the Fox studios immediately? Things are really happening fast in Paris. We need you here. I said, well, first of all, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And secondly, what I was supposed to talk about was closing bases in Europe. They said, oh, forget all that stuff. Just get here as quick as you can. We would send the car to you. So I wound up down there at 4:50 in the morning. 2 hours before I started. But look, so I really I've got some really good friends of mine. So I'm not being critical of Fox, but if you think by watching Fox News you're getting the whole story, you are not. You got to find alternate sources. You got to go to some of these alternate sources like Human Events and Daily Caller and Red State Advocacy. You got to go to things like Wally Schubat's website and Act for America. You got to go through. You got to go. And I've got so many of them on there. I get it. I've spent most of my time reading. But the second thing is read. Read books. Read what's going on. Read about the founding fathers. Read about history. If you can't read anything else, read history. Read American history. I got so many books on the Constitution and the founding fathers because I want to know them. I want to associate with them. I want to identify them. Somebody throw a grenade. Read. Get informed and know what's really going on. And get involved. Look, God bless you for being part of the Tea Party. Get involved. We've got a new thing coming up called the Oak Initiative. Where's the crazy pole? Where's Greg working? Everybody look back there. You see that guy raising his hand back there? First of all, don't ever ride with him because he drives like a maniac. That's Rick Worthington. And he is, well, I lost him. Mark Gurley. Mark, where's Mark? Here. Oh, okay, and Mark. They're coordinators for a thing called the Open Initiative. I'm on the board of this, and I'm telling you, it is our intention to make a difference in this country. We are fighting a good fight. We get hammered all the time. Join the Open Initiative. Get involved in something. Get involved in something that's your church. Get involved in a campaign, somebody's campaign. Go to the school board meetings. Your children's future depends on their education. And I will tell you right now, there's not an elected position in your county, in your state that's more important than the school board. Because it makes a difference. Get on the school board. Get on the city council. Hey, how many of you saw what happened in Houston? The non-discrimination ordinance in Houston. Now let me tell you why that mayor was the mayor. It is irrelevant to me at the end of the day how she has sex or who she has sex with. That's between her and her God. Well, what does matter to me is when you start discriminating against Christians because of that. Well, you know why she was the mayor? Twice. Because 18% of the people in Houston went to the polls and voted. All right? So that non-discrimination ordinance that was designed to discriminate against Christians, and the same thing in San Antonio, could have been prevented if people had gotten out and gone to the polls and voted. So you've got to vote. You've got to get out and vote. And vote, by the way, for God's sake. Vote. Don't look at shiny objects. That's how we got our current administration. Don't do that. Vote. Run for office if you have to. Support the candidates. Get into somebody's campaign. See, I don't know anything about politics. Hey, you can put signs up. Somebody will show you how to do that. If you can't figure that out, somebody will help you. You got to get involved in campaigns. Take a stand. Take a stand. Let people know where you stand. How many people will just remain silent when the people around them are talking about things that you don't agree with? How many of you just sit and remain silent? How many of you challenge things that you know are wrong? Well, let me tell you, not enough. I can tell you that. Take a stand for what you believe in, and don't worry about what the media is going to say to you. If the media says anything nearly as bad about you as they do about me and Dave Adjuma, call us, we'll pray for you and sympathize. Not only am I now part of the Ku Klux Klan, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, I'm anti-Semitic. Now guess what? My children are Jews. The truth doesn't matter. You got to stop worrying about what somebody's going to say about you.
Right.
You got to do what you know is right. Amen. Take a stand. Go to a protest. When somebody's protesting a city ordinance, a city council ordinance, and they're going to have them go. Be there. I'm not talking about an armed insurrection here. I'm talking about being calm. Go to these protests. I got 3 minutes. Is that what? I ain't paying any attention to you anyhow. Let's put that sign down. Every time I want to get the problem. Hey, look, defend people. Defend the conservatives against these liberal bloggers and all. Start your own blog. Do something. Get involved. Write op-eds. Do something to counter some of this bad stuff that's being said about people that really share your values. Defend religious liberty. Stand up for it. Hammer your representative. Don't think that calling and emailing your representative doesn't do any good, because it does. They keep a record. Finally, this is where I'm going to get evangelical. Pray for America.
Man.
Stay alive. Let me tell you, when you've been as close to death as I have, when you've been shot, hit with artillery, you've had a parachute over your head totally malfunctioned, and the only reason you're alive is because a 60-foot pine tree snagged your canopy and stopped you before you hit the ground. Bolstered your Mogadishu, mortar went off, and I was talking to 2 of my men. That mortar went off, and I went down. I was knocked out for a minute. When I got up, I saw one man was dead, and another man was laying there screaming, "My legs, my legs, my legs." My lieutenant colonel, my master sergeant, was dead. I was on wobbly legs because I'd been hitting the leg by this mortar. And I started yelling, "Find a doctor! Find a doctor!" Somebody that have read my book, you know the story because it's in here, but I want to repeat it for all of you. Find a doctor. I didn't know it, but the doctor was laying right next to me. He walked up and talked to me, and when the mortar went off, it hit him in the groin here and severed his femoral artery. He was bleeding out. And there were 14 more men laying in a circle. We'd all been hit. They took us into a tent, a little tent. There's actually an Air Force Reserve tent there. There's a little mobile hospital right next to where we were. They laid us side by side. They started working on him, going frantically working on him because he was dying. He was bleeding out. And they hooked up a blood pressure machine on him. They hooked up a heart monitor on him. It was the old vertical height. And I could see his blood pressure was dropping. I could see his heart rate was dropping. He was laying right next to me, and I just reached over and I took his hand. And I said, "Rob, now you hold on, buddy." I said, "Rob, you hold on. You'll make it." And I began to pray for him, and I began to say, "God, don't let this man die. God, I've already lost 15 men. I've seen the bodies of 15 of my men had to put on a bird and headed back to the United States straight to the American flag. God, don't let this one die. God, I pray, don't let him die." They worked feverishly. I saw everything right. "Rob, hold on," I said. "Hold on. Hold on, buddy. You're going to make it." God, don't let him die. All of a sudden, he was totally unresponsive. I just squeezed it on the left hand. Suddenly, I got a very feeble squeeze. And Rob opened his eyes and he kind of turned his head over to the side like this. He said, "Tell Barbara that I love her." His eyes rolled back and they closed. he was gone. Barbara was his wife. No, Barbara. No, God, don't let him die. I said, don't let him die. God, spare him. God, save this one. Spare this one. Air Force nurse. She was very gentle. She reached out her hand on my shoulder and she said, sir, she said, let him go. I said, he's gone. Let him go. I could not let him go. Father, I said, don't let this man die. God, I don't care what the machines say, because he had no pulse and he had no heart. I don't care what they say. Don't let him die. She said, sir, let him go. He's gone. She reached out, took my hand, took his, and tried to pull him apart. I would not let him go. I said, I don't care what she says. I don't care what the machines say. God, I'm asking you to intervene now and save him. God, he's not dead. I don't accept that he's dead. God, let him live. In the name of Jesus Christ, let him live. Don't you give up on America. You see, if you believe in prayer as I do, make it a daily thing that you pray for this man. Prayer does that. My mother prayed for my father for 50 years before my father came into the light and turned his life around. Oh, he loved God. He just didn't have a relationship. Believe in America. Pray for America and believe that if you pray, God has an obligation to answer your prayers. It may not be when you want it, it may not be the way you want it, but God will answer your prayers, I promise you. Because that man kid is practicing medicine today in the Shenandoah Valley. He was just named in the last 2 months the #1 rural doctor in the state of Virginia. Somebody sent me a photograph of him sitting with an elderly patient. And I gave this talk in Ashland, North Carolina. A woman came up to me this week and she said, sir, you don't know, but that was my brother. And she said, let me tell you the rest of the story. My brother's on fire for the Lord now. He's a deacon in the church. He teaches Sunday school. He takes kids to a summer camp, a Christian summer camp. You don't have to believe what I believe. You can believe nothing. I support your right to believe absolutely nothing. But for those of you who do believe in a sovereign God, and believe in prayer, I'm asking you to pray every single day for America. It's been a privilege being with you.